We all have wanted Ash to have a fully evolved Johto starting trio, and we have also wished for him to have actually kept the Larvitar so that he could potentially have evolved it to a Tyranitar. Yes, Ash's own Tyranitar. Well, maybe those things will finally happen this time around as we continue to explore the events of what if Ash fully evolved all his Pokemon. This time we go to the Johto region, so let's start with our Johto journey with this video.
Imaginative, guess I'm all with me. I know it's my destiny. You're my best friend. In a world we must defend.
Ash and Gary prepared to have their battle as Ash's friends and Professor Oak watched from the sidelines. Gary suggests that they should have a one-on-one battle with their latest catches, as it would be the best way to determine who the better trainer is, as it would serve as a proof of the Pokemon they choose as a member of their teams. Ash agrees and sends in Teddiursa as Gary sends in his Eevee. The battle starts as Gary calls for a Shadow Ball and Ash asks Teddiursa to negate the attack with a Shadow Claw. Gary then calls for a Swift around the ground, leading to a dust cloud as Ash, realizing what's about to happen, asks Teddiursa to go underground with Dig. But when the dust settles, everyone is shocked to see that Eevee is nowhere to be found. This is when Gary asks Eevee to push out from beneath Teddiursa as Eevee launches Teddiursa out of the ground along with itself. Ash praises Gary, who asks Eevee to use a bite on Teddiursa's arm, but Ash asks to negate the effect of bite by asking Teddiursa to use Metal Claw with an arm and using that to protect himself, shocking both Eevee and Gary with the strategy. With Eevee now stuck on one of Teddiursa's arms, Ash asks it to land a Metal Claw with its other arm, sending Eevee flying, and then asking Teddiursa to launch an Aerial Ace on Eevee to double the impact while it's mid-air, and it succeeds. Eevee barely manages to stay up, with Gary being annoyed and Ash having a grin on his face. Gary then calls for a Swift again. Ash asks Teddiursa to finish the battle off by cutting through the Swift with Metal Claws and finishing Eevee with a Shadow Claw as Ash wins the battle. Ash comes up and hugs Teddiursa as Gary picks up Eevee. Ash then, to everyone's surprise, instead of rubbing in the victory, goes on to Gary and tells him that it was a great battle and shakes his hand. Gary agrees the same. Professor Oak praises them both and invites all of them to his lab to discuss about the GS ball. But as all the tests on the GS ball fail, Gary prepares to take his leave. Ash is confused and asks Professor Oak where is Gary heading to. Oak replies that Gary has decided to enter the Johto League, which amazes Ash that Gary is already on his way to a new region. This is when, before departing, Gary tells Ash that he will win the Johto League and prove to Ash that he is the superior trainer. After Gary has left, Ash is excited about the prospect of a Pokemon League in a new region and asks Professor Oak how he could participate in it too, as Professor Oak explains to them that they can register for the Johto League and the Gym Challenge in the Johto region in New Bark Town. Oak also tells Ash that the Johto region has brand new Pokemon like his Teddiursa and very strong trainers. Ash is excited hearing all this and proclaims that if he's going to become a Pokemon Master, he has to battle with the best and befriend new Pokemon as much as he can. As a result, he has decided to participate in the Johto League as well. Misty supports Ash, and Brock also rejoins the group, stating that both him and Misty still need to travel a lot more to fulfill their own dreams as well. Just then, Oak hands Ash the GS ball, saying that he needs Ash to help him find out more about it, and since Ash has decided to head to the Johto region, he tells him to take the GS ball to Kurt, a man living in Azalea Town, which is also in the Johto region. Ash agrees, saying that they will first go to New Bark Town to register and then take the GS ball to Kurt in Azalea Town. Our heroes then decide to leave next morning. Now at dinner, Oak presents Ash with a new Pokédex, explaining that the new model is loaded with anything Ash will need to know about the new Pokemon he will encounter in Johto. Professor Oak also advises Ash to leave his stronger Pokemon at his place so that he could learn and befriend the new Pokemon of the region. Oak also states that starting afresh will allow Ash to raise his new Pokemon with his new experiences that he had gained on his past journey and showcase his growth as a trainer. Ash instantly agrees to this, and so do Misty and Brock, as they also decide to drop the stronger of their Pokemon at Oak's with Ash's Pokemon. At that moment, Tracy announces that Oak is going to let him be his assistant at the lab, so he explains to Ash that he will be supporting him from the lab this time around. Ash then goes on to hug Tracy and wishes him the best. The next next morning, Ash decides to take Pikachu, Charizard and Teddiursa with him, as Brock decides to take along Zubat, Vulpix, Horsey and Onix, whereas Misty on the other hand chooses Poliwag, Magikarp and Psyduck for the journey ahead. Ash hugs all his Pokemon and tells all of them to continue having fun and looking after themselves. He also asks all of them to keep training and having battles on the weekends to keep getting stronger, as he will definitely call upon them whenever the need arises. He specifically tells Scyther to keep all of them ready for battle, as he may need them in the Johto League. As Ash then hugs his mom, Professor Oak and Tracy as the original trio leaves for New Bark Town. Now, Ash and his friends are walking through a foggy forest for New Bark Town. This is when Togepi senses something and promptly hops out of Misty's arm, causing the others to follow it. The group is then startled after seeing a mysterious blue Pokemon revealed by the Pokédex to be the legendary Pokemon Suicune on a formation in the middle of the lake. Then suddenly, Suicune notices them and attacks them, making all of them fall on the ground. Realizing that the only way they get out of this is through a battle, Ash asks Pikachu to step in, but then Suicune howls as Charizard also comes out of his Pokeball. This is when Brock explains that both Charizard and Pikachu realize that they both need each other against someone as strong as Suicune, as Ash calls for Pikachu to use Thunder, but Suicune uses extreme speed to dodge it and sends Pikachu flying into a tree, as Ash asks Charizard to use Dragon Rush, which lands pushing back Suicune. This is when Ash asks Pikachu to land an Iron Tail, as Suicune launches a Shadow Ball on Charizard, which is successful. Now, all three Pokemon, having taken some damage, are in a standoff. Ash calls for Charizard to grab Suicune and use Seismic Toss. Suicune, while in the hold, constantly bites Charizard with an Ice Fang, causing both of them to crash into the ground. This is when Ash asks Charizard to not let go of Suicune, as Suicune tries using Ice Fang again to escape. This is when Ash calls for Pikachu to land a massive Thunder on Suicune and Charizard, which massively damages both the Pokemon. After the massive Thunder, Charizard barely manages to get up, as Suicune is also majorly weakened, launches a Hydro Pump at Charizard to finish it, as Pikachu, realizing this, comes in between, taking the Hydro Pump, as while everyone is focused on Pikachu being hit with the Hydro Pump, Suicune manages to escape, as our heroes help Pikachu and Charizard get up and thank them for protecting them. Brock though finds it weird that Suicune attacked and ran away this randomly. He states to everyone that he was testing them for some weird reason. This is when the fog lifts up and our heroes are able to clearly see New Bark Town at a distance and head to the Pokemon Center to heal and register for the Johto League. Now, just like the canon, Team Rocket end up stealing Professor Elm's Totodile, and our heroes on reaching the Pokemon Center are forced to wait for Nurse Joy to arrive after seeing her video message. But when Nurse Joy fails to arrive in the given time, our heroes replay the message and decide to head to Professor Elm's lab mentioned in the message to find Nurse Joy. Our heroes then, like the canon, arrive at the lab only to see Officer Jenny and learn from Professor Elm and Nurse Joy about the stolen Totodile, which was supposed to be given to a new female trainer. Our heroes then also learn about the starter Pokemon of the Johto region and also come across that Professor Elm was once Professor Oak's student. Then, like the canon, our heroes with Officer Jenny help track Team Rocket, as this time Misty with Poliwag defeats Jesse's Lickitung, as Brock asks Zubat to save Totodile. Now, our heroes succeed in saving Totodile, as Ash specifically praises Misty more than Brock, and our heroes head back to Elm's lab. Back at Elm's lab, Ash makes a call through to Oak before Professor Elm comes in and speaks to his former mentor. Nurse Joy then escorts Ash and his friends to the Pokemon Center. There, she officially registers Ash for the Johto League and informs him about the first Johto League gym being in Violet City. Now, after all their Pokemon are healed and rested, Ash and his friends then head out for the gym in Violet City, saying goodbye to Officer Jenny, Nurse Joy and Professor Elm next morning. On their way venturing from New Bark Town, Ash and his friends stumble across a girl and a Chikorita who ends up catching a Rattata. The group takes their time to meet the trainer, who introduces herself as Casey and reveals that she loves yellow striped Pokemon and wants to catch an Electabuzz one day. She then goes on to challenge Ash to a 3-on-3 battle, but Ash's Charizard easily defeats all three of her Pokemon, namely Chikorita, Pidgey and her Rattata. She runs away and ends up being tricked by Team Rocket into re-challenging Ash for a Pokemon battle so that they can steal both of their Pokemon. But then, like the canon, Ash and Casey team up to have Chikorita and Pikachu to perform a double attack of Thunder and Razor Leaf, which sends Team Rocket blasting off. With the battle won, Pikachu and Chikorita congratulate each other while Casey and Ash share a high five, as Casey apologizes to Ash for letting Team Rocket convince her that he was a cheater. Ash though tells her that he was just like her when he was first starting as a trainer, and that it's okay for her to not be the strongest right now, and tells her that she will become stronger as she continues her journey. After hearing this, Casey is very motivated and leaves Ash and gang to go on her own journey, promising to encounter them at the Johto League. The next day, while on their way to Violet City, Ash Ash and his friends stop in the middle of a forest and notice several of the trees are missing their leaves without showing any other signs of damage. Suddenly, Pikachu spots a horde of an unknown Pokemon and Butterfree clamped up on a healthy tree trunk which Ash's Pokédex identifies as Heracross, as Ash then prepares to catch one and save the tree too, only to be like the cannon interrupted by the forest manager Woodruff, who explains to Ash that the ones damaging the forest are not the Heracross but the pincer, as this is when the pincers stampede to the tree, scaring off the Butterfree as the Heracross fly up and attack the pincer. However, the Heracross are easily scared off by the pincers and fly away. This is when Ash notices a Butterfree still trapped in the branches of a tree as a single Heracross pops up in front of the pincers to defend the Butterfree and is quickly attacked by the giant spike pincers. Ash, upset that Heracross is being ganged up on, sends in Charizard to help, who easily takes out all the pincers and Butterfree soon flies away, but Heracross is too tired to fly away and ends up being attacked by the pincer again, only to be saved by Pikachu's thunder as he watches Ash helping him while being carried to the ground by Charizard. As Heracross rests, Woodruff worries about the pincer returning. He explains that the pincer live on the opposite side of the river and that something has been causing them to cross the river and invade the Heracross's territory, which is unlike them. Our heroes, like always, promise to help him as they head to the pincer territory, where, like the cannon, they find Team Rocket being the root of the problem, like always, with a mecha pincer sucking all the nectar in the pincer's territory. Meanwhile, Heracross has also followed our heroes. This is when Ash sends in Teddiursa as Brock and Misty send in Horsey and Poliwag respectively to take down the mecha, but they struggle as this is when Heracross joins in the fight, and together the four Pokemon send Team Rocket away flying, destroying the mecha due to Heracross's physical strength, as Heracross along with Teddiursa hugs Ash, shocking everyone. As this is when the balance is restored and the pincer group return to their territory, thus leaving the Heracross and Butterfree in peace. The Heracross who battle Team Rocket's mecha approaches the group, so Ash asks him if he wants to join him and tosses a Pokeball at, as Heracross is happy and willingly enters the Pokeball. Our heroes then say goodbye to Woodruff and continue on their path to Violet City as Ash celebrates his latest catch. After traveling for a while, Ash and his friends see something poking out of a bush and identify it as a baby Stantler as per the Pokédex, while Brock attempts to lure it out by offering it food. However, Stantler remains hesitant and produces a nice scent from its antler as a herd of Stantler adult ones suddenly charge at the trio, forcing them to flee. The trio then starts searching for the Stantler after Brock notices that its leg was injured, and like the cannon, Brock eventually approaches the baby Stantler and says he could heal its wound, and after earning its trust, bandages Stantler's front leg. Once he's finished, Stantler looks at Brock admiringly and then falls asleep on his lap. Ash asks Brock if he wants to catch Stantler, but Brock thinks it's best if it goes home in the wild and releases it back to the forest, forcefully sending it away. Then, like the cannon, Brock is forced to battle to save Stantler from Team Rocket and successfully does so with Ash and Misty's help. Later, Stantler comes up and licks Brock on the cheek as Brock apologizes for asking it to leave, asks it to join his team as Stantler happily does so. Our heroes then continue on their journey with a new friend added to their team. Now, on their way to Violet City, Ash and his friends have decided to take a mountainous trail. Just then, he notices a wild Chikorita. Remembering Casey and a Chikorita, Ash loudly proclaims his intent to catch the Chikorita and sends in his newest catch, Heracross, to help catch it. Heracross starts the battle with a Fury attack as Chikorita counters it with a strong tackle, as this is when Ash asks Heracross to use a different attack as it uses Bullet Seed. Chikorita counters it with a Bullet Seed of its own. Then Chikorita launches Razor Leaf as Ash asks Heracross to cut through it, and so it does with an Aerial Ace, also landing the attack on the grass type Pokemon. This is when Chikorita launches a Vine Whip as Ash asks Heracross to catch the whips with its arms and then launch Seismic Toss, which sends the tiny Chikorita crashing into the ground. This causes a big rock to nearly fall on Chikorita as Ash jumps in and saves it, but this causes both of them to fall along the edge into the forest as Team Rocket are watching this from afar. This is when a sudden snowstorm hits, forcing Brock and Misty with Pikachu and Heracross to leave Ash and rush off to the Pokemon Center for some shelter. As Ash picks up Chikorita, who bites his arm as they make their way to a cave and set around a small fire they started with the help of Charizard. This is when Chikorita runs away and Ash impulsively runs out in search of Chikorita and tells Charizard to remain inside in case Misty and Brock came. Ash eventually falls down a tunnel where he finds Chikorita freezing from the cold. Upon seeing Ash, Chikorita looks away. This is when Team Rocket appear and try to steal Chikorita as Ash comes in between them and picks her up to start running, which shocks Chikorita Chikorita, seeing him trying to protect her again, but she jumps out of his arms and stands against Team Rocket, somehow insisting Ash to instruct her. And so he does, as both of them team up and defeat Team Rocket's Whippinbell and Lickitung, sending Team Rocket flying away again. This is when Chikorita collapses, as Ash, also tired, somehow barely manages to carry her to the entrance of the cave before collapsing himself too, where Charizard then finds them and warms them up as they wait out the weather and the snowstorm. Ash, Charizard and Chikorita are then reunited with Brock and Misty in the morning, and the group returns to the Pokemon Center for some healing and rest. Ash and his friends prepare to hit the road again, however Chikorita follows the group as they begin to depart and waves her scent in Ash's face. Nurse Joy explains that she wants to come along, and Ash happily accepts his newest Pokemon, sending a Pokeball catching her as our heroes leave for Violet City. Ash and his friends decide to take rest in Cherry Grove City by a riverside, and Ash, after polishing his Pokeballs and the GS ball, leaves them by the river as he runs to eat. This is when a Quagsire appears from the water and Misty attempts to catch it and fails. Then, like the cannon, Quagsire steals the GS ball and swims away. With Ash and Brock's lack of a water Pokemon, a strong one that is, Misty is asked to recover the GS ball. So Misty lets out Poliwag and asks it to follow the Quagsire, as she follows Poliwag along the river bank, and so do Ash and Brock. But mid-chase, Poliwag crashes into a new Pokemon in the river, forcing Misty to battle it and lose Quagsire in the chase. The Pokédex describes this new Pokemon as Mantine, as Poliwag and it enter a water gun competition, as Poliwag ends up defeating Mantine, who gets badly hurt. Misty goes to the lake and picks it up as our heroes rush it to the Pokemon Center to heal it, where eventually Misty in the evening goes to catch after being by its bedside the whole time as it was recovering, apologizing to it for hurting it this bad and winning it over. This is when Ash and gang are reminded of them needing to get back the GS ball, as the Mantine communicates to Misty to follow it, and by the time the moon is up, our heroes witness the Quagsire, like the cannon, having a water gun competition and eventually get the GS ball back as they say goodbye to Cherry Grove City. Now, after all these days of traveling and meeting and befriending new Pokemon and catching them, Ash and his friends reach the Violet City gym, with Ash being a little anxious to get his first Johto badge. However, before they are able to go inside, Pikachu is stolen by Team Rocket and they manage to escape, only to be stopped by a boy on a glider and his Pidgeot. After Team Rocket are blasted off, the glider guy finally lands and gives Pikachu back to Ash. Ash mentions to the boy that his Pidgeot reminded him of his own Pidgeot, and the glider guy sympathizes with Ash while bringing up his own love for the flying type Pokemon and revealing them to be his favorite type. Ash introduces himself and his friends, and the glider guy introduces himself as Falkner, the Violet City gym leader, surprising the group. Then Falkner escorts Ash and his friends to the Violet gym as Ash and Falkner take the positions, and the referee explains that each winner can use 3 Pokemon. Falkner sends in Hoot Hoot as Ash sends in Teddiursa, as Falkner calls for a peck, Ash calls for Metal Claw to block the peck and then counter it with a Shadow Claw, smashing Hoot Hoot in the ground. Falkner asks Hoot Hoot to get up, and so it does, and then Falkner calls for a Confusion, which causes some damage to Teddiursa but does not confuse it, as Ash asks it to counter with a Shadow Claw, which lands, as Falkner then asks for a Tackle, as Ash calls for Teddiursa to finish it off with an Aerial Ace, and so he does, while clashing with the Tackle and sending Hoot Hoot crashing into Falkner's feet. Falkner then sends out his Dodrio and mentions that no challenger has ever defeated it, as Ash states well, he would not mind being the first one, as Falkner calls for a Tri-Attack which overpowers Teddiursa. Ash asks Teddiursa to get up, as Falkner calls for a Drill Peck, as Ash calls for Teddiursa to block it with a Metal Claw and push back with an Aerial Ace, as Teddiursa takes some damage but is successful in also giving some damage back. Falkner then calls for an Agility, as Dodrio gets behind Teddiursa with the speed, and then a Tri-Attack again, as Ash calls for Teddiursa to use Shadow Claw to block it, but he fails as Teddiursa is knocked out. Ash then sends in Pikachu as a Massive Thunder lands on Dodrio, which is super effective. Falkner is impressed as he calls for an Aerial Ace, as Ash asks Pikachu to block it with an Iron Tail, and he does so successfully. Ash then again asks Pikachu to land a Thunder, which Dodrio dodges with agility and his speed, but just when Falkner was seeming to be relieved, Pikachu vanishes from the ground and comes from behind Dodrio using a Dig and landing a Thunder, finishing off Dodrio. Falkner then praises Ash and sends out his last Pokemon, Pidgeot, as Ash calls for another Thunder, which Pidgeot dodges, but to Falkner's surprise again, Pikachu has vanished underground again. This is when Ash asks Pikachu to jump up in front of Pidgeot and not behind it, catching Falkner off guard and grab onto him, as Ash calls for another Thunder, which lands and is super effective. Falkner calls for a Wing Attack, which Ash asks Pikachu to counter with Iron Tail. Pikachu is able to do that successfully as both the Pokemon take some damage. Ash then decides to finish off the battle and asks Pikachu to break rocks from the ground and send them flying at Pidgeot with Iron Tail. Falkner asked Pidgeot to dodge all of them, and it managed to do so with agility. Now, Ash meanwhile has asked Pikachu to use Quick Attack and run in behind Pidgeot while it was busy dodging the rocks, and jumps off the wall and lands a Thunder, which totally finishes off Pidgeot as Pikachu also falls to the ground being exhausted. This is when Ash is announced as the winner for still being left with a Pokemon, as Ash tells Pikachu that he is proud of him, as Falkner presents Ash with a Zephyr badge and admits that he has been inspired to work more and train harder seeing Pikachu's effort. He also wishes Ash good luck in the Johto League, and Ash and his friends then bid farewell to Falkner as they have learned that the second gym is in Azalea Town and leave for it. So that's it for part 1, guys. Gym 1 of Johto region is done, and Ash has won it in style without using Charizard. So what do you think will happen in the next part? The second gym battle? Maybe, maybe not. And Ash will catch his new Pokemon. Definitely he will. Do not be worried about it. Now, keep an eye out for part 2. It will be coming out soon. And also, we'll be starting with the Pokemon Adventures manga videos on the channel too. So keep an eye out for those. So that's all from this video, and that's it from my side. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and tell me your views in the comment section. Till then, peace, Dragon Guide.